about strategic decisions, Ovadia? Now that you've seen it, if you go back to the sensitivity analysis, we look like shopping was in a really strong place compared to Facebook and TikTok. I mean, does it now look like that's the place where you would like pile into for scale? Or, I mean, how do you think about the results in the context of what else you could be doing in the portfolio?
I think what this really, the question that this begs is, okay, great. So it works at this level of scale and this level of media mix, right? So there's no dramatic result here that says, holy cow, we have to shift our entire, everything's not working. So this kind of is in line with what we're seeing in results. And it's not suggesting a dramatic recalibration of our media mix. Yes, I do think we have to push shopping for a lot of reasons, and we're kind of working on that on our side as well, because we've seen some good indications there. But I think the next question that this comes is, how much scale do we have on these channels? And so maybe the next step strategically would be a scale test of some kind, because that's really where we need, because however you slice any of these cakes, for the most part, the results are good enough for us to be able to spend at these levels, 10x if we can.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, let me pause, open the floor here. Any questions for the two gentlemen here? Go ahead, Rashmi.
So here, I know Eli said that, he's trusting GeoTest because you've said that that is the most reliable and, something that can be looked at. My follow-up question is, would it make sense to conduct tests to verify which reading to kind of go ahead with? For suppose if today we say that, okay, we're going ahead with GeoTest and we're making some changes. Can that be the second experiment to say, okay, you know what, we went by GeoTest reading, we're conducting the next experiment to see how do all other tests react to this change, made on the basis of GeoTest. Over a period of time, within 1 year, for a given brand, it would answer the question of, hey, which model should we trust? Should we trust MTA, MMM, GeoTest, or others, right? And that's according to me is a very a good decision to be kind of answered for a brand in a year's time, because then long-term decisions can be based on that.
I think it's a very good question. From my seat, my concern is that even if we prove it today, that doesn't mean that in 3 months that the GeoTest, even if we prove it out today, is going to continue to be correct. So I still lean back on the triangulation approach, where I'd rather not put my eggs in one basket, even if we do as good a job as we can of proving it out, because I have the option of triangulating against 3 or 4 other methods. So I actually like the approach of retesting this. I'm making it up every 3-4 months, whatever it is, retesting all of them, making sure that they're lining up, because this isn't an exercise in precision. We're not looking for 1%, 2%, $2, $3 of CAC difference here, because it's always fuzzy. All of this is a non-discrete math. We're not adding 1 and 1 and getting 2. We're adding 10 or 12 different metrics and observation points and giving us conviction that we're moving in the right direction. But we're not trying to say, is it 118 or 121? We're trying to say, is it between 115 and 130? And is that acceptable? So for me, I'm looking at a fairly wide band, and I just want to make sure that we're always triangulating, because I don't know that there's ever a source of truth. There's directionality, and we just want to have conviction that our directionality is about right.
And then I guess
I would add one thing, is that as the spend gets higher, as you start getting into $1 million a month of spend, 2 million, 3 million a month of spend, then I think first of all, because there's so much more dollars and impressions being run through the models, the precision gets higher and you can lean on it more and make some way more serious tactical decisions. But at this level of spend, it's still a triangulation exercise. But as the spend gets higher, then I think your question becomes very, very relevant in terms of, yes, revalidate the GeoTest, make sure everything is right, because you're going to have to make some pretty serious tactical capital allocation decisions around those metrics, and the dollars just get big. So sorry, go ahead, Eli.
And then, I guess, Rashmi, just to add, I guess I didn't answer this when you asked your first question, because you asked which one was my favorite, but I'm always looking at everything, and I'm always making my decisions, keeping all the metrics in mind. So for example, we ran this it's been like what 2 months since we ran the geo test. And since then, I showed you guys all my post-purchase survey on Monday. Like since then, I've been using my post-purchase survey values to shift budgets a little. And when these results landed, I had shifted budgets towards TikTok already to the point where when we first got the results from Madan, it was like, oh, I didn't really like have any real change to make because we already shifted towards close enough to the geo test result, if that makes sense. So we're using everything always because nothing, as Avadia mentioned, like nothing's 100% accurate. And we're lucky to get data from a bunch of different places, and we can just triangulate everything to make like, I guess, decisions we're very comfortable with. And we know it's never going to be like, 100% perfect.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for answering that.
Very nimble. It's an example of a very nimble brand and a very data-driven decision making in a setup that's very efficient, right? There's the two guys who are making the calls, and they're both data-driven, they're both analytical. I would venture to say they are on the top 2-3% of brands who operate like this, right? Most of the kind of places, it's kind of a bureaucratic nightmare, right? If something like this comes out, it'll be 2 months before anything moves, right? People are like arguing over these numbers back and forth, as opposed to making, like as Eli said, by the time I came back with the results, he's already made a bunch of decisions, and he's already testing in market what the new posture is taking in, and he's getting more data from it, it's calibrating, right? That's actually much more valuable than trying to like, and of course, bureaucracy helps nobody.
Yeah, and Madan, there's also the other end where change happens way too fast and it's like 100% trusted, and you just like screw everything up. Like we're very comfortable with knowing we're not 100% right, but we're at a point that we're never going to be very wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and remember, there is a bottom line to this, which is kind of MERS, right? So it's your marketing efficiency ratio, or just the bottom line is what percent of my revenue is spent on marketing total, new, repeat, whatever. Are we profitable? So as long as we're profitable and our cash flow is working, that is the bottom line safety metric, right? So in the end of the day, we could be way off filter and unoptimized on our marketing mix and our ratios. But if the brand is profitable and you're backstopping your cash flow so you're not losing money, it gives you a lot more runway to actually make the decisions and test it and gain precision.
Right.
That's like really, it's like layers of defense, so to speak, is like, if we were losing money and we're seeing results in our P&L, like actual P&L that said something's wrong, like we're losing money or something, that implies a much more intense focus on what's going on. Do you pull back? Do you add? Do you mix? Do you reallocate? We'd have to take a bigger bet. We'd have to take more risk on understanding the results here. But because the P&L shows that things are kind of proceeding and the results comply with or match what these models are saying, it gives us a lot of confidence that we're kind of in the right direction. If the P&L wasn't matching this, we'd have to make some much more serious decisions and get really, really close and say, okay, cool, something's not working here. It's time to make a change. Let's take some risk and actually try to move the needle in a different way. So that's like, in the end of the day, I've always been a proponent. So this goes back to my old job, and I got in big fights with kind of the board about this, that the person who's running growth needs to also be a CFO, and also a little bit separate needs to be involved in product decisions. But the main thing is that growth and finance are like this, because all of these models do not matter if the company is losing money because of marketing, right? And that's really the key. So that's where like we've structured the business where my role is CFO and also growth, right? So like growth and finance go like this because it's our biggest spend by far. So that's why it's really a big deal to make sure those two functions are lined up, because if the finance side is seeing results that don't match the marketing model side or just the marketing results, then you're in much bigger trouble than you think. And it doesn't matter what the models say. If the results aren't flowing through the bottom line, you're screwed.
Bhavadi, can I ask you one question? I mean, you're in a unique situation where you are a founder, you're also, head of marketing and head of finance at the same time, right? You have the the privilege of doing that. Have you seen the partnership between a CMO, CFO, head of marketing, head of finance work well in any other circumstance, any other place you worked at? No.
No.
The answer is no. My God. Wow.
I haven't seen it. I'm sure it exists, but I think that there's, it's interesting because in all the old places where even when functionally I was the head of finance, like I built the P&L and did a lot of that work and the financial models, the actual CFO who the board liked because, whatever, would always say, oh, can you spend less on marketing? It'll improve our results. And we're like, it's not how it works. No, it's hard. I put this on the table a long time ago. Chief growth officer should replace the CFO and replace the CMO. This chief growth officer is finance reports to them. Sounds crazy, but like, this is important, I think. The chief growth officer is the person who's responsible for driving profitable revenue, right? And that means you need finance to report to them. And it also means that you need marketing to report to them and product. Those are the three things that work together to produce profitability. So that was the thing that I always said. No one agreed with me, but it works. You need the product to develop software that improves retention and acquisition. That's functionally their job. Tech product, I mean, and you need finance to be reporting into growth because the growth of the people who spend money, and it's the same thing. Operations can be a separate role. You'd be surprised. I actually think that ops and logistics should report into growth also. And I think that person who's the head of growth or, whatever, needs to be able to own those three things because all of those three things work together to produce profitability, period. Save money on shipping, save money on warehousing. That's more money for acquisition, more money for retention. And how do you measure all that? That's what finance does. Finance needs to roll up to that person who's making these capital allocation decisions. So titles aside, that is the way it works. And whether that's a CEO or CFO, those are old titles that kind of have very different implications. So the new one is this like chief growth officer who I believe everyone should report into. And that person is responsible across the board for finance, which includes logistics, marketing, blah, blah, blah. That's whatever. A lot of times that's the COO, but I think that's the wrong title.
Hey, Kamal, you had a question. Let me get to you. Go for it.
Yeah, sure, Madan. Yeah. Madan, this is related to the model, the different results that we got from the model. So like when I saw those results, what struck in my mind was basically MTA was an outlier. Like MTA result was different, and I have seen this earlier as well in a couple of other clients. So if you look at MMM and incrementality and also the post-purchase, all those are kind of like testing methods. Where we are,
not really. Post-purchase survey is not really testing. It's a survey. So and asking the customer a question, but you can ask them exactly which campaign.
But still there is a sample data that is involved.
It's a sample. It's not a census.
So basically all the other methods are having some sort of assumptions or sample data or kind of multipliers going to, whereas when it comes to MTA, personally, I don't know what term to use, but it's a little bit more aggressive where it is using the real-time data or like real time. So
yes.
It's good and bad. What's good is it's real time. It could be real time, which means you could get daily results and stuff like that. The bad is it only has access to data it has access to. It doesn't have access to impression data. And the more upper funnel the media is, TikTok and like podcast, and if you go further and further upper funnel, its trackability drops significantly, right? And its ability to measure those channels kind of drops off very significantly, right? So as Upadhyay says, if I was in his place and if the investment into the MTA tool is not really a concern, it's affordable, absolutely use it. It's one more data point, use it to triangulate. But we are not at a point in the industry where you can use one thing, and triangulation is the answer. And honestly, I think he's latched onto that on his own. That's the answer. You cannot take one thing and say that's the only thing I'm going to use for making decisions. It's too heterogeneous, it's too diverse right now, and there is a lot of nuances to each channel and brand and whatnot. answer is to take a bunch of these things and use them to triangulate to the optimal decision.
So basically, the objective here was CPA, right? So do you think that is more kind of tactical, or because personally I believe MTA should be used to take decision like for more tactical things. So
You can still use it within a channel, right? Like for example, within Facebook, within TikTok, you can use MTA relatively. I mean, so the baseline might change. You think that it should be $150 CPA, it reports $200 CPAs. Okay, but within those TikTok placements, maybe it's okay to use MTA. But my point is you can use TikTok directly. You can use TikTok's own platform reporting directly with a multiplier, and it'll give you better results than MTA because its tracking will be perfect. Its ability to track impressions, clicks, and last click conversions is much stronger than a third-party platform to be able to connect those things together, right? It's my bias, of course. I've seen too many of this trip when clients tripping on it to kind of believe it anymore. But I know that you spent what 10, 12, 13 years in MTA. I did too. I spent like 10 years in MTA too. So I feel bad about saying this, but hey,
It doesn't work. It's like someone asked me if I was worried about Google Analytics deprecation. I was like, I haven't looked at Google Analytics in 5 or 10 years. Like, who cares? Like, sure, it's a useful tool and it has a lot of data points, but it doesn't tell you what you need to know. It's like everything's last click. And yeah, they have all the different models and it's great, but no one ever used that. So it's like, Kidbox we ran with VCs and everything. And they were always asking us for like, what does Google Analytics say? And I'm like, who cares? It doesn't matter. And really, at the end of the day, for the past 5 or 10 years, most companies are spending most of their money on Facebook from 60 to 85%. And when Facebook attribution was strong, that's all people needed to know. And like, sure, people did influencer and podcasts and all that stuff. There are other ways of hacking measurement for that, but it didn't matter because at the end of the day, it was a Facebook game. And until iOS 14, Facebook told you what you needed to know. And that was really it. Like, you didn't need to get super complicated. And all of a sudden profitability is important. And so people are looking closer, and that's why everyone's doing a lot of this stuff, but it's new. It's relatively new to the industry.
Vishnu, did you have a question? Sorry, go ahead.
Madan, can you go back to that split? There was a slide where you were showing the spend split, right? Earlier slide.
Blend split. Are you talking about the sensitivity analysis?
No. If you go to the slide, right?
Not this one, right? Okay, not this one, not this one, not this one. This one?
No.
Where are you talking about?
Yeah, the 30 slide, the slide number 30.
Yeah, okay, good. Go for it.
Yeah. So essentially what we're saying is around 70% of the spend or 69% is on Facebook across markets.
Yeah,
and around and 17% is on TikTok, right?
Yeah.
So one thought that came to mind is when we are doing a TikTok holdout, right? You are actually cutting only 17% of the spend. But if you look at it from an aggregate perspective, you still have 83% of the spend going in into that.
Yes.
Right. So what does that do to the lift? And while for Facebook, if you look at it, when you take out 69%, only 31% of the aggregate marketing spend is there in that market, right? So
yes. So the point, that's the point. That's why you can only measure it this way, right? Which is take everything into account, the halo effects, channels working together, other media and market. How do you understand the effect of one channel and the investment in one channel? Is to take it out of market and look at it, right? Now, if you want to understand the overall effect of marketing, you can turn off all media and go dark on all media for a bunch of markets and see how it works. You can do that, absolutely. I've seen clients do that. A little bit more intrusive to do that. And this is a way for you to understand the effect of just Facebook, just TikTok, right? And I think when you come from MTA, there's always this, we think of the world in very deterministic terms, which is, people see Facebook, then they search and they convert. Well, the world is very probabilistic, and in the sense that it's you add more Facebook, you're going to have more growth, right? You take off more Facebook, it's going to slow down growth, right? Now, what is that factor? Is kind of how you measure it. the idea of thinking about it deterministically as a customer journey was kind of somewhat failed. That really, it's really not possible to orchestrate customer journeys. Let me give people 3 impressions here, get them to search, and then give them 1 more retargeting impression here, and then kind of like string together these contacts to get them to convert, right? This idea, that was a 2008, 2007 kind of programmatic, individualized impression targeting type of thing. It doesn't work out. Okay,
Yeah, but
Carl, you have a bunch of questions. Sorry, go ahead, Krishna.
no, but where I was actually coming from is, like you said, right? So maybe TikTok is really upper funnel, Facebook is maybe mid funnel, and probably your maybe branded search is lower funnel, right? So when you take out one media, but the rest of it is there, you would that result in some kind of skew in the result, right? Because
you're not testing for the interactive effect. If you want to ask ask the question, we're not very deliberately not testing for it. You can test for it. You can say, I want to test Facebook and search together, and I want to turn them off, turn them on together. You can do that. It just turns out that for many DTC brands, most mid-funnel brands, is that the direct effect of the Facebook alone is 90% of the total effect. The interactive effect is a really small portion. Maybe it's like 5%, 7%. You can test for it. It turns out it's a really small portion of the total effect. The direct effect is a massive portion. Most of the effect is direct effect. Okay, so you're just removing and adding media, it gets the answer you're looking for. And like how, so you see how everybody is reacting to the result, and that's kind of how people are consuming the result. You can ask the question you're asking is very much of an enterprise question. If you're an Amex, for example, you consulted for Amex, AT&T, they'll be like, wait, they all work together. And that's how agencies have sold it for many, many years. That's also like a religion now. But you can, if you really believe that there is interactive effect between 2 channels, you can test them together. You can turn them off and turn them on together. You can test for it together. It just turns out in practice, majority of the effect, 90+% of the effect that you'll feel from a channel is direct, which is whatever the effect is of seeing Facebook ads, right? And you can measure it. This is the most classic way of measuring it, on and off. And you do it in a geo context, match market context.
And for what it's worth, I think people sort of have an intuitive but also very data-based answer to this, which is for certain revenue tiers, these are the things you do, and they're proven to work because you see it work from other companies. So from 0 to 50 million, really it's a Facebook, TikTok, or Facebook, Snapchat 5 years ago. Google, like those are the channels that you run to figure out if your product market fit is actually there. And then once you have to start running some other things that are true upper funnel or that don't have a click component, like a podcast, like radio, all those channels work fine. You just can't measure them quite the same way. And the interactive effect is very different. So, and always kind of root these thoughts and discussions in human behavior. If you're listening to terrestrial radio, you have to listen usually in the car. You hear an ad, they're usually with high frequency. You hear it 5, 6, 8 times. If you think about yourself, you rarely in the car are going to go Google around for that. You will often figure, maybe you save a voice note to yourself, or then you see a Facebook ad for it or something. Like these things make sense and there is some logic to it. Whereas a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, all of us have done this before. You're scrolling around, you go through and you click shop, period. Like, so the results actually do match human behavior and our own personal behavior. Whereas if you're shopping at Zara, when do you really shop at Zara? Well, you know that there's a store everywhere and you saw the billboards and maybe you saw a TV commercial, whatever. It's a different thing. I know I need clothes, I go to Zara. It's a different kind of way of shopping than any of us are kind of accustomed to. Whereas think about Revolve as the online version of something. That's a very different game also, where people are seeing it's a very product react kind of concept. So it's a different dynamic. But the interactivity is very real, but for the most part, especially for D2C brands that have shorter time to consideration, i.e. lower price points, it's really one primary touch point. Sure, there's some amount of interactivity. There's a fuzziness, like upper, middle, low funnel is a spectrum. It's not like a defined thing, but for the most part, it's pretty straightforward for us. And it's actually a very important point, and I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but it's a very important point that you should really tune all of the analyses and the methodology and what you're analyzing to the brand. So if you have someone selling a $500 jacket or $1,000 couch, furniture, mattress, those are very, you would not do the, you would want to change the way you're thinking about the analysis if you're running those campaigns, because they're different and they might take 20 days for someone to decide with 10 touch points and 3 of them matter.
Yeah.